Mercedes just crossed the line first in Miami, but the FIA may have just found something that could erase the entire result. A possible illegal trick hidden inside the car. Not visible on TV. Not caught during the race. But powerful enough to control everything. Because think about this. Antonelli loses positions at the start, fights through traffic, reports gearbox and throttle issues, and still doesn't lose pace. Russell finishes strong. McLaren can't attack, even with similar speed. And now, suddenly, the FIA steps in. If this is confirmed, it's not just a penalty. It's both Mercedes cars disqualified. Points gone. Victory erased. Championship shaken overnight. And the most dangerous part is this? If it was used in Miami, how long has it been there? At first, nothing about Miami looked illegal. It looked almost too clean. Antonelli's race started in chaos. From pole position, into the first corner, he lost places immediately, swallowed by traffic, forced into battles with Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, and Leclerc all at once. That kind of start usually ruins everything. Dirty air. Overheating tires. Lost rhythm. But somehow, it didn't. And that's the first detail that matters. Because instead of fading away, Antonelli started coming back. Overtaking, recovering, rebuilding a race that should have been compromised from the very first lap. Lap after lap, the car stayed stable. No drop-off. No visible weakness. And then came the moment that changed everything. Lap 27. Mercedes makes the call. They bring him in early. Fresh tires go on, and instantly, the pace comes alive. That outlap becomes the most important lap of the entire race. McLaren reacts one lap later, but it's already too late. That single lap creates the gap. Antonelli comes out ahead. From that point on, control. Now here's where it starts to feel different. Because that kind of strategy only works if the car behind it is perfectly balanced. Tires need to switch on immediately. Power delivery has to be smooth. Energy deployment has to be precise. Everything has to align. And for Mercedes, it did. Too well. Because later in the race, something breaks that perfect picture. Antonelli reports problems. Gearbox issues. Throttle response not behaving correctly. The kind of issues that normally cost time, sometimes positions, sometimes everything. But none of that happens. No drop in pace. No opening for Norris, who stays close, pushing, waiting for even the smallest mistake. But the mistake never comes. And that's where the contradiction begins. Because now you have two realities at the same time. A car with problems. And a car performing like nothing is wrong. In Formula One, that doesn't happen by accident. And that's exactly the moment where people inside the paddock started asking a different question. Not how good is Mercedes, but what are they doing differently? And this is where the tension spreads beyond Mercedes, and into the entire grid. Because once that question appears, every team starts looking for answers. McLaren felt it first. Norris wasn't just close in Miami, he was trapped. Always within a few seconds, always applying pressure, but never getting a real opportunity to attack. And that's unusual, because when two cars have similar pace, there's always a moment. A mistake, a weak corner, a chance to go for it. But that moment never came. And that's what starts to frustrate engineers. Because if the speed is there, but the opportunity isn't, then something else is controlling the race. Ferrari's situation makes it even more suspicious. They arrived with the biggest upgrade package of the entire weekend. 11 separate updates, designed to transform their performance and close the gap to the front. And still, they weren't even close to winning. Now think about that. Weeks of development. New parts. New concepts. And yet, they're behind a team that brought almost nothing new. That doesn't just raise questions. It breaks expectations. Because in Formula One, upgrades are everything. If one team improves massively and still can't catch another that barely changed, something doesn't add up. Even Red Bull, a team used to dominating, found themselves stuck in the same pattern. Close enough to stay relevant, but never in control when it mattered most. And when three top teams all hit the same invisible ceiling, that ceiling becomes the story. This is exactly when the FIA steps in. Not because someone complains publicly, but because patterns like this don't go unnoticed. They start analyzing data. Looking deeper into how the car behaves, not just how fast it is. Checking systems that don't usually attract attention. And this is where everything shifts. Because what they're looking for isn't something obvious. It's something subtle. A behavior. A response. A system working in a way that gives a consistent advantage without standing out. And now, that search has led to something very specific. A possible illegal trick. Not fully explained. Not officially detailed in public. But serious enough to trigger this level of scrutiny. And once that word enters the conversation, everything changes. Because Formula One doesn't forgive advantages outside the rules. It removes them. And if necessary, it removes the result. Which means Miami is no longer just a race that Mercedes won. It's a race that might not count at all. And that's why the tension right now is at its highest point. Because the question is no longer who was faster. It's something much bigger. Was Mercedes actually racing within the rules, or just closer to the edge than anyone realized? And this is where everything turns inward, where the real tension inside Mercedes begins. Because once the FIA identifies something, even as a possibility, the team can't ignore it. They have to react. Immediately. Every system used in Miami gets reviewed. Not casually, not as routine, but under pressure. Engineers go back through the data, line by line, trying to understand exactly what the FIA might have seen. Because now, it's no longer about performance. It's about exposure. And that changes everything. The same engineers who were pushing the limits now have to question those limits. The same solutions that delivered performance are now being looked at from a completely different angle. Not, does it make us faster? But, could this be illegal? And that shift is dangerous. Because Formula One is built on confidence. Confidence in the car, in the data, in the decisions being made under pressure. The moment that confidence turns into doubt, performance starts to crack. And Mercedes cannot afford that. Not now. Because behind them, everything is tightening. McLaren is already close enough to win. Ferrari is preparing more upgrades. Red Bull is waiting for any sign of weakness. So Mercedes is trapped in a situation with no easy way out. If they keep pushing the same direction, they risk confirming the FIA's concerns. If they change something, even slightly, they risk losing the advantage that made them dominant. Either way, something breaks. And that's where the pressure reaches the drivers. Because Antonelli and Rusell are not just racing anymore. They're waiting. Waiting for a decision that could redefine their entire season. Think about Antonelli for a second. This was supposed to be the moment that confirmed everything. A young driver, handling chaos, managing technical issues, holding off pressure from one of the fastest cars on track, and still winning one of the most complex races of the season. That's how champions are defined. But now, that moment is under question. Because if the car doesn't pass scrutiny, the result doesn't stand. And in Formula One, results are everything. Records don't remember how hard the race was. They remember whether it was legal. Rusell faces the same reality. A strong, solid finish that adds valuable points to the championship, now hanging in the balance. And this is where the situation becomes even more critical. Because if the FIA takes action, it won't just affect Miami. It forces a much bigger question. How long has this been there? Was it just this race? Or was it part of the performance in previous victories? Because if the same system, the same trick, existed before, then the impact multiplies. Points disappear. Standings change. And a championship that looked controlled suddenly becomes wide open. Meanwhile, other teams are already preparing for that possibility. Because in Formula One, you don't wait for the final decision. You anticipate it. You position yourself to take advantage the moment something shifts. And right now, everyone is watching Mercedes, waiting for that shift. Because if it comes, it won't be gradual. It will be instant. A dominant team, suddenly vulnerable. A championship leader, suddenly under pressure. And a season that looked predictable, suddenly completely unpredictable. Which brings everything back to one unavoidable question. Was Miami the race that proved Mercedes was untouchable? Or the race that exposed exactly how they were doing it? And this is where the truth starts to reveal itself, not through statements, not through headlines, but through everything that happened in Miami when you look at it all together. Because the Real story was never just the win. It was the way the win happened. Think about it. Antonelli loses positions at the start, but doesn't pay the price later. He fights through traffic, but his tires never fall off. He executes a perfect undercut, and gains exactly what he needs, no more, no less. He reports technical problems, but his pace never drops. And under maximum pressure, the car never breaks. Individually, every one of those moments can be explained. Together, they form a pattern. A pattern that doesn't rely on one big advantage, but on something much more powerful. Consistency. Control. Stability in moments where other cars start to lose it. That's the kind of advantage that doesn't show up on a single straight. It shows up everywhere. Every lap. Every corner. Every situation. And that's exactly why the FIA is looking at this so closely. Because the most effective tricks in Formula One are never obvious. They don't make headlines during the race. They hide inside the behavior of the car. They make the difference when conditions are changing. When tires are fading. When pressure is highest. That's when they reveal themselves. And that's exactly when Mercedes looked strongest. Now here's the key point. If this is just a clever interpretation of the rules, then Mercedes didn't break anything. They outsmarted everyone. They found something others didn't. And they used it perfectly. But if it goes beyond that, if this crosses the line, even slightly, then everything we saw in Miami changes meaning. Because it's no longer about execution. It's about advantage. An advantage that shouldn't have been there. And that's what the FIA has to decide. Not whether Mercedes was fast, but why they were able to maintain that level of control when everything around them suggested they shouldn't. Because McLaren was fast. Ferrari brought upgrades. Red Bull had track position at the start. And yet, none of it was enough. That's not just performance. That's something deeper. Something built into the car itself. And now, that's exactly what's being questioned. Because if that hidden factor is confirmed as illegal, then Miami isn't just a race under review. It becomes the moment where everything changes. The moment where dominance turns into doubt. The moment where a championship leader becomes vulnerable overnight. And the moment where every team behind suddenly has a chance. Because in Formula One, when an advantage disappears, it doesn't just slow you down. It exposes you. So now, everything depends on what happens next. The FIA's decision. The interpretation of that possible trick. The line between innovation and illegality. Because Mercedes is standing exactly on that line right now. And when that decision comes, there are only two outcomes. Either they stay on top, stronger than ever, or everything they built this season starts to fall apart. And that's why Miami will never be remembered as just another race. It will be remembered as the moment where we all started asking the same question. Did Mercedes win because they were the best? Or because they found something no one else was supposed to have?